Margaret Collins stood at the edge of her husband's freshly dug grave when her mother-in-law turned her head and spat in the dirt at her feet. "You ain't welcome under my roof no more. Pack your things and be gone 'fore the sun touches them hills." The preacher hadn't even closed his Bible. Mourners froze. Margaret's knees nearly gave. 3 days of widow's grief, and now this. Cast out in front of half the county, her trembling plus-size frame swallowed by cheap black mourning silk. $22 to her name, and nowhere on God's earth to go. If you've ever been told you were too much for daring to take up space in this world, too big, too old, too plain, too poor, then this story belongs to you. Pour yourself something warm, settle in real close, and stay with me clear to the end. And do me a kindness. Leave a note in the comments and tell me what town or what country you're watching from tonight. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet, ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming, and let's begin. Margaret didn't remember walking away from the grave. One moment her mother-in-law's spit was drying on her boot, the next she was standing in the kitchen of the house she'd kept clean for 16 years, packing a carpet bag with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "You best hurry!" Rebecca, her late husband's sister, leaned against the doorframe like a cat watching a mouse. "Stage leaves at 4. Mama don't want you here past sundown." "Rebecca, please." "Please what, Margaret? Please let you stay. Please pretend you wasn't a millstone round Henry's neck the whole 16 years he carted you about. I loved him. He pitied you. There's a difference." Margaret's hands stilled on the dress she'd been folding. "Don't you say that to me. You reckon a man like Henry Collins, who could have had any girl from here to El Paso, picked a fat girl like you out of love. Rebecca. He picked you 'cause Mama told him no decent woman would put up with his drinkin'. And she was right." Margaret closed her eyes. 16 years of small cruelties came back to her in a single wave. The Christmas dinners where her plate came last. The Sundays after church when her mother-in-law announced loud enough for 3 pews to hear that Margaret was blessed not to have borne children considering. The whispered jokes about how the porch boards groaned when she walked past. "I'm leavin'." "'Bout time." "Don't you speak of Henry that way again." "Or what?" Margaret looked up. Whatever Rebecca saw in her eyes made the younger woman take a step back. "Or I'll remind every soul in this town which one of us sat by his bed for 3 months while the fever ate him, while you and your mama were too busy measuring the windows for new curtains." Rebecca's mouth went thin. "Get out, Margaret." "I'm going." She closed the carpet bag. She did not look back at the kitchen. She did not look back at the bedroom where Henry had died, holding her hand and whispering her name. She did not look back at the front porch, where she'd shelled peas for 16 summers. She walked out the front door with $22 in her purse, and the weight of her own body pressing down on her like a sentence. The stagecoach office was 3 blocks east, and every step felt like the whole town was watching. Maybe it was. Word traveled fast in a place like that, and a widow being throwed out at her own husband's funeral was the kind of word that traveled fastest of all. "Where to, ma'am?" the ticket man asked, not looking up. "West. As far as $20'll take me." He looked up then. "That'll put you near Amarillo. Stage stops in a town called Redemption." She almost laughed. Redemption, of all things. Some folks find it, some folks don't. "Reckon I'll see which one I am." He handed her the ticket without another word, but his eyes had softened. That was the worst part, when even a stranger could see what kin couldn't. The stage was crowded. 4 passengers crammed into a space made for 3, and Margaret took the seat by the window because the man across from her made a face when she sat down, and the woman beside her shifted her skirts away, as though Margaret were carrying something contagious. "Excuse me, ma'am," the man said after a quarter hour of jolting silence. "Reckon you could lean the other way a bit, crowdin' me some." "I beg your pardon." "Just sayin'." The woman beside her sniffed. "Some folks ought to consider what they're costin' the rest of us in comfort 'fore they buy a ticket." Margaret kept her eyes on the window. She did not cry. She had cried herself empty 3 days ago, kneelin' beside Henry's body, before the undertaker came. "I said excuse me, ma'am." "I heard you." Then maybe shift. Margaret turned slowly. There was nothing left in her to fight with. There was also nothing left in her to apologize. There ain't any other way for me to sit, sir. I'm sorry for your trouble. My trouble? Your trouble, yes. The man started to say something else, but the woman beside her laid a hand on his arm. Leave her be, Walter. She's just lost her husband. How do you know that? Whole town's talking about it. That's the Collins woman, Henry Collins's widow, the one his people throwed out. Margaret felt the words land like stones. Whole town's talking. She closed her eyes. Beg pardon, ma'am, Walter mumbled, and turned his face to the other window. She did not answer him. She didn't have any answers left. The axle broke a little past noon. The crack was loud enough that the driver hollered before the coach even finished tippin'. Passengers spilled out, dusting themselves down. Margaret was the last one out because she was the slowest, and because nobody offered her a hand. How bad? Walter asked. The driver crawled under the coach and came back swearing. Bad. Axle split clean through. What now? There's a town a mile north. Redemption. Got a smith. If Hank's got the iron, we can be rollin' by mornin'. Mornin'. Maybe afternoon. Depends on Hank. They're a boardin' house. Mrs. Pruitt's. $1 a night, too, with supper. Margaret's hand went into her purse and counted what she already knew. $2 and change after the ticket. She'd hoped to stretch it through the next week, not the next night. She walked the mile to Redemption because there was nothing else to do. The other passengers walked ahead of her, talking among themselves, and not one of them looked back to see if she was keeping up. She did not go to Mrs. Pruitt's. She sat down on a bench outside what looked like a general store, set her carpet bag at her feet, and let herself, just for 1 minute, put her face in her hands. Ma'am? The voice was low, quiet. A man's voice, but not the kind that asked you to shift your weight in a stagecoach. She did not look up. I'm all right. Don't appear that way. I'm all right. Please walk on. Can't rightly do that. She lifted her face. The man standing there was tall, lean as a fence rail, sunburnt at the cheekbones. His hands were rough as bark. He was holding the brim of his hat against his chest the way a man does when he's met a lady and means it. He didn't look at her like Walter had. He didn't look at her like Rebecca had. He just looked at her like she was a person sitting on a bench. Caleb Dawson, ma'am. I run a place about 4 miles south of town. Margaret Collins. Pleased to meet you, Mrs. Collins. Just Margaret. Margaret, then. He glanced once at her carpet bag, once at the black dress. Stage breakdown. Axel. Figured. Saw him walking in. Yes. You don't look like you got a place. I don't. She heard the words come out and was surprised at herself for saying them. She didn't owe this stranger anything. But there was something in the way he was looking at her, not pity, not judgment, just plain seeing, that made it harder to lie than to tell the truth. I see. I had $22 this morning. After the ticket, I've got 2 and change. I can't pay for the boarding house, and I can't sleep on the street, and I don't know one soul west of where I started. How'd you come to be in such a fix? My husband died Tuesday. Caleb's hand tightened on the brim of his hat. I'm sorry to hear it. His people throwed me out at the burying. He took that in. He did not flinch from it the way other folks did. That's a cruelty. Yes, you got kin elsewhere. No. Friends? None that'd take me. Children? No. He nodded slowly the way a man nods when he's adding up a sum in his head. You hungry? Sir, I can't. Wasn't asking if you could. I was asking if you was. She closed her eyes. She was so hungry her hands had gone shaky an hour back. Yes. Wagon's just there. My boys are with me and we was about to ride home. Reckon we could feed you 'fore we did. I can't pay you for it. Didn't ask you to. Mr. Dawson. Caleb. Caleb. I'm a stranger to you. Reckon you are. And I'm a stranger to you. But I figure a body in trouble is still a body in trouble whether I know her name or not. She did not have the strength to argue. She picked up her carpet bag. Her hands were still shaken. He took it from her without making a fuss about it. The two boys waiting in the wagon were smaller than she expected. The older one looked 13, maybe a thin 14, with eyes that had seen too much and a mouth set hard against the world. The younger couldn't have been more than 7. He clutched a battered tin cup in both hands like it was the only thing holding him to the seat. "Boys, this here's Mrs. Collins. She'll be riding home with us for supper." The older boy's eyes went flat. "Why? 'Cause she's hungry. There's lots of folks hungry." "Ethan?" "Pa, we ain't got food for ourselves half the time." "Ethan Dawson, you'll mind your manners, or you'll walk." The boy fell silent. He did not look at Margaret. The younger boy did, though. He looked up at her with his whole small face, and his eyes were too big for his head. "Hello," Margaret said softly. The little one did not answer. He just kept looking. "That's Noah," Caleb said. "He don't talk much these days." "That's all right." She climbed up into the wagon with as much grace as her body and her grief would let her. Caleb did not look away when she struggled, and he did not pretend not to see. He just put his hand under her elbow and steadied her, the way a man steadies any person who needs steadying, and then he climbed up next to her and clucked at the horses. Noah, on the seat behind, slowly leaned forward and rested his forehead against Margaret's shoulder. She froze. "Noah," Caleb said quietly, "don't bother the lady." "Let him be," Margaret whispered. "It's all right, truly." She did not move for the next 4 miles. She barely breathed. A child she had known for a quarter of an hour was sleeping against her shoulder, and she felt for the first time in 3 days, maybe for the first time in 16 years, that she was holding something that mattered more than she did. When they reached the house, Ethan jumped down before the wagon stopped and disappeared without a word. Caleb watched him go and said nothing. Noah's hand crept into Margaret's as she climbed down and didn't let go even when she reached for her carpet bag. "Noah, son, go on inside and wash up." The boy did not move. "Noah." "He's all right," Margaret said. "Ma'am, he ain't taken to a stranger in 2 years." "Then I won't make him let go yet." Caleb looked at her a long moment. Then he tipped his hat back an inch and let out a breath. "Come on in, Margaret. I'll fix what supper there is." The supper was thin, beans and cornbread and a little salt pork. Margaret ate slowly, partly because she was ashamed of how much she wanted to eat, and partly because Noah was sitting beside her, with his small hand resting on her sleeve, and she did not want to dislodge him. Ethan ate at the far end of the table without looking up. Caleb watched all 3 of them without seeming to. "Mrs. Collins." "Margaret." "Margaret, you said you got no kin." "No." "No place to go." "No." "What was your plan?" "I didn't have one." He nodded slowly. "I lost my wife 2 years ago come October. Fever. Same one took your husband like as not. I'm sorry. She left me these 2 boys and a ranch I can't run alone. Ethan there does the work of a man 3 times his age, and it's eaten him alive. Noah ain't slept a full night through since she went. I've been trying to do for 'em what their mother done, and I've been failing at it. I ain't a soft man. I don't know how to be." "Mr. Dawson?" "Caleb, and let me finish. I ain't a man for pretty words, so I'll say it plain." She held very still. "There's a man in this county name of Warren Bishop. Owns the land all around mine. He's been after this place since 'fore my wife took ill, and he's been after it harder since. He's trying to take it through the bank. Says a widower with 2 boys ain't fit to hold a ranch. Says the place needs a woman's hand, and since I ain't got one, the title ought to pass. That can't be the law." "It ain't exactly. But Bishop's got the judge's ear, and the judge has got the deed office in his pocket, and the law in these parts is whatever the man with the most cattle says it is." He set his fork down. "I need a wife, Margaret. Not for me. For my boys and for this land. I need someone who'll stand up in a courthouse and say she's mine so Bishop can't say I ain't fit. Mr. Dawson. Caleb. Caleb, you don't know me. I know you sat in the dust outside a town you never seen for today, rather than spend $1 you couldn't spare. I know my son Noah ain't put his hand on a stranger since his mother died, and he ain't let go of yours since you climbed in my wagon. I know enough." Margaret put her hands flat on the table to stop them shaking. "I'm not Caleb. I'm not what people picture when they hear the word wife. I never have been. I ain't asking for a picture. You don't understand. There will be people in this town. There will be people in that courthouse. They will look at me, and they will say things. They have said things my whole life. I reckon they will. And you'd stand there with me anyway. Margaret, I'd stand there because you stood there. That's all there is to it." "Why?" "Because you need a home, and my boys need a mother, and I am tired of burying people I love." Noah's small hand tightened on her sleeve. Margaret looked down at the boy. He was looking up at her with those two big eyes, and his mouth was open just a little, and she understood with a clarity that frightened her that this child had been listening to every word, and that he was waiting for her answer the way a small thing waits to find out whether it gets to live another day. She lifted her face to Caleb. It would be in name. That's what you're asking. In name, in law, in whatever the courthouse needs. No promises. No promises but the one we make to them boys. And what promise is that? That whoever stands up in that courthouse stays. Margaret swallowed. I have been told my whole life that I was too much, too big, too plain, too poor, too quiet, too loud. I have been told I was a burden to every soul who ever shared a roof with me. I do not know how to be a wife in name, only to a man whose boys are already holding on to my sleeve. I do not know how to walk into your house tonight and not break my own heart by morning." Caleb did not look away. "Then don't walk in alone." He reached across this table. He did not take her hand. He laid his palm up next to hers, open, and waited. Margaret Collins, who that morning had stood at her husband's grave with $22 to her name and the spit of her mother-in-law drying on her boot, slowly laid her hand into a stranger's open palm and did not pull it back. "All right," she whispered. "All right," Caleb said. At the far end of the table, for the first time, Ethan Dawson did not look away from her either. His mouth did not soften. His eyes did not warm. But he watched her, and he did not get up to leave. And 4 miles north, in the back room of a saloon in the town called Redemption, a man named Warren Bishop set down his whiskey glass and listened, real careful, to the boy who'd come riding in to tell him that the Dawson rancher had been seen taking a strange woman home from the stage stop. Bishop smiled slow, the way a wolf smiles when something steps into his trap on its own 2 feet. "Well now," he said softly, "that's mighty interesting news." He took another long pull from his glass. "You go on back into town, son. Send a rider to Judge Holloway tonight. Tell him the widow Dawson finally got himself a bride, and tell him I want to know everything there is to know about her by sunup." The boy nodded and turned to leave. "And son." "Yes, sir. Make sure you find out where she came from, because every woman has something she's running from." The boy left. Bishop refilled his glass and lifted it slow toward the door. "And whatever she's running from, ma'am, I'll find it. And I'll bring it right back to your doorstep." Morning came slow over the Dawson Ranch, and Margaret Collins woke in a bed that was not hers, in a house that was not hers, beside a man who was not yet her husband. She did not move for a full minute. She listened. Down the hall, Noah was crying. She was out of bed and into the hallway before her feet remembered the floor. Noah. The crying caught, hiccuped, went quiet. "Honey, it's Margaret. I'm coming in." The door creaked. The boy sat up in the middle of his bed, his small face wet, his fists pressed against his eyes. "Bad dream." He nodded. "You want to tell me about it?" He shook his head. "That's all right. You don't have to. Can I sit with you?" Another nod. She lowered herself onto the edge of the small bed. The boards creaked under her weight. The old shame came up like bile, and she swallowed it down. "You scoot over now, and I'll just sit a spell." He scooted. She sat. After a moment, his small hand found her sleeve. Mama used to sing. Margaret's breath caught. Did she now? When I had bad dreams, she'd sing till I went back to sleep. What did she sing? Don't remember. That's all right. Will you sing something? She had not sung in 3 years. Not since Henry stopped wanting to hear her. But she opened her mouth and she sang real low and real soft, the only hymn her own mother had sung to her, Shall We Gather at the River, and she sang it through to the end. Noah's hand stayed in her sleeve the whole time. By the last verse he was asleep. She did not move for a long while. When she finally stood, Caleb Dawson was standing in the doorway. How long he'd been there she did not know. He did not say anything. He just looked at her with something working behind his eyes that she did not have a name for. And then he tipped his head once like a man who'd seen the answer to a question he'd been carrying a long time, and he stepped back into the hall. At the kitchen table he poured her coffee without asking. Sun's up. I'd like to take you into town if you'll go. Town. Courthouse. We can make this legal 'fore Bishop has time to make it not. Today. Today. She set down her cup. Caleb, I'm wearing my husband's funeral dress. I know it. I will walk into that courthouse looking like a woman who buried one man and married another inside the week. Yes, ma'am. They will say things. They will. And you'd still take me in. Margaret, every hour we wait is an hour Bishop's lawyer is working. We can fix the dress later. We can't fix the deed once he's got his hands on it. She closed her eyes. All right. All right. Caleb? Yes. If I do this, you understand, I will not be a wife in name only forever. I will be a wife who cooks your food and washes your shirts and sits across this table every morning for the rest of my natural life. I will not be a guest in your house. Do you understand me, sir? He set his coffee down. For the first time since she had met him, he smiled. It was a small thing more in the eyes than the mouth. Margaret Collins. I've been waiting 3 years for somebody to say a sentence like that in my kitchen. Then say my name. Margaret. Say it again. Margaret. All right. Hitch the wagon. The clerk at the Potter County Courthouse did not look up when they came in. Help you. Marriage license. Today. The clerk looked up then. His eyes went to Caleb, to Margaret, back to Caleb. The corner of his mouth did something Margaret had seen on 100 mouths in her life. Caleb Dawson. Yes. This the bride? Yes. The clerk leaned back. You sure about this, Caleb? I'm sure. Mr. Bishop come through here yesterday evening? Margaret felt Caleb go still beside her. That's so. Said you might be in. Said there's a question about the title on your place. Said the deed ain't gonna recognize a marriage to just any woman off the stage. Bishop don't run this office. No, Judge Holloway does. And the judge sees things Mr. Bishop's way more often than not. Margaret's hand moved before she could think. She laid it flat on the counter. Sir? Ma'am? You will issue this license today, or you will explain to my husband-to-be why the law and redemption don't apply to men who ain't got cattle in it. The clerk blinked. That a threat, ma'am? That is a sentence. Take it however you please. For a long moment the clerk did not move. Then he reached under the counter, slid the book across, uncapped the pen. Sign here, both of you. Margaret signed her name. Her hand did not shake. Caleb signed under her. The clerk slammed the book closed. Justice'll see you in the side chamber. He don't do ceremonies. He does signatures and I do. 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes. When she walked out of the Potter County Courthouse, Margaret Collins was Margaret Dawson, and the dress she wore was still black, and the man beside her had not so much as touched her hand through any of it. But he opened the wagon door for her, and he set his palm under her elbow, and as he handed her up, he said low enough that only she could hear, "Welcome home, Mrs. Dawson." The town was watching. She felt it before she saw it. The women on the boardwalk who'd been talking went quiet. A man stepped out of the mercantile and stopped halfway through tipping his hat when he saw who was on Caleb's arm. 2 children pointed and were yanked back by their mother. Don't look at him, Caleb said quietly. I'm not. Yes, you are. Caleb, I've been looking at faces like these my whole life. I know how to walk through them. I reckon you do. They reached the wagon. Before he could hand her up, a voice came from behind. Caleb Dawson. He turned. The woman who'd spoken was tall, thin, wore a dress that cost more than Margaret's whole carpet bag. Mrs. Bishop? Is this her? This is my wife, Margaret. Your wife. That's what I said. The woman looked Margaret up and down, slowly. The way you look at a horse you have already decided not to buy. My husband said she was off a stage. He didn't say she was... The woman's mouth moved searchin'. Of size. Margaret felt the heat hit her face. She did not move. Mrs. Bishop, she said evenly. I am of size. I am also of name now. And the name I am of is Dawson. You will address me by it, or you will address the heir. Mrs. Bishop's mouth tightened. My husband will be by to see you both. Then he knows the way, Caleb said. He handed Margaret up into the wagon. He did not look back, neither did she. But her hands shook the whole way home. The first 3 days at the ranch passed like somebody had pulled a curtain back on a part of her life she did not know was missing. She cooked. She'd forgotten she knew how to cook for more than 2. She baked bread in the iron stove and burned the first loaf and laughed at herself out loud, and the sound of her own laugh startled her because she had not heard it in 6 months. Noah ate the burnt loaf without complaint. He ate the next one twice as fast. He watched her cook from the kitchen doorway like he was afraid she might dissolve if he looked away too long. Ethan ate nothing she made. Ethan, ain't hungry. You ate a whole plate 2 nights ago when your pa made beans. Said I ain't hungry. Eat the bread. No. Ethan Dawson. You ain't my mother. The room went silent. Noah looked up from his bowl. Caleb set down his fork. Margaret did not flinch. No, I'm not. Then don't act like it. I'm not acting like it. I'm telling you to eat the bread. And I'm telling you no. All right. All right. All right. Don't eat. But sit at this table because your father had a long day, and your brother eats better when you're here, and you're a Dawson, and Dawsons eat together. Now sit. For a moment she thought he was going to bolt. He did not. He sat. He did not eat, but he sat. It was a start. Warren Bishop came on the 4th afternoon. He came alone, which was its own kind of threat. He rode a black horse, and he did not get down when he reached the porch. Dawson? Bishop. Heard you got married. That's so. You and I both know what this is, Caleb. You know nothing, Warren. I know a man buys a wife when his back's against the wall. I know that stage was 20 minutes out of town when she was seen sitting on a bench crying with $2 in her purse. I know what she is. Margaret stepped out onto the porch. She did not say a word. She stood beside Caleb, and she looked at Warren Bishop, and she waited. Bishop tipped his hat to her. Mrs. Dawson, or whatever name you was using on Tuesday. Mr. Bishop? Ma'am, I don't bear you any ill will personal. You was tossed out by your kin, and you found a roof. I respect a woman who finds a roof, but this roof is sitting on land that ought to be mine, and the man who put a ring on you done it for the deed. Did he? Yes, ma'am, he did, and I am here today as a Christian neighbor to tell you that if you walk away from this place tonight, if you climb back on a stage tomorrow with $100 of mine in your purse, I will see to it that nobody in this county speaks ill of you again. New name, new town, fresh start. Margaret felt Caleb tense beside her. She did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Bishop. Mr. Bishop. Ma'am, I have spent my whole life being offered just enough to leave a room, just enough money to disappear from a Christmas dinner, just enough kindness to vanish from a family portrait. I am tired of being paid to be gone. Ma'am, I am not finished, sir. Bishop's jaw worked. I do not know if Caleb Dawson married me for love, or for the deed, or for the boys, or for all 3. I do not yet know him well enough to ask, but I know I have a place to set my carpetbag down. I know there is a child in this house who fell asleep in my arms on the first night I ever saw him. And I know that no amount of your money is going to move me off this porch. Then you'll be moved off it by a judge. Then by a judge, sir, but not by you. Bishop looked at her a long moment. Then he tipped his hat again. Mrs. Dawson, I do believe you mean that. I do. That's a pity. I was hoping for something simpler. He turned his horse. You'll be hearing from my lawyer 'fore the week's out. We'll be ready. He rode off. Caleb did not speak for a long minute. Then he said very quietly, Margaret. Yes. Where in God's name did that come from? I don't rightly know. You ever talk to a man like that 'fore today? No, not once in 38 years. Well, he took his hat off and ran a hand through his hair. Well, ma'am, you best be ready to do it again, because that man does not lose. He has not yet met the woman I am going to be by the time he tries. The lawyer's letter came 2 days later. Caleb opened it at the kitchen table while Margaret was kneading dough. He did not say anything for a long minute. Caleb? He did not look up. Caleb, what is it? Margaret. What? Sit down. I'm making bread. Sit down, Margaret. She sat. Her hands were white with flour. He read it to her without looking at her face. This is to inform Mr. and Mrs. Caleb Dawson that a formal complaint has been filed in the Potter County Court by Mrs. Eunice Collins of Wheeler County, mother of the late Henry Collins. The complaint alleges that the said Henry Collins did not die of natural fever, as stated on the certificate of death, but rather from prolonged poisoning administered by his wife Margaret Collins, now Margaret Dawson, over a period not less than 3 months preceding his demise. A warrant is being prepared for the arrest of Mrs. Margaret Dawson on the charge of murder in the first degree. The kitchen went so quiet she could hear the bread rising. Caleb. I'm here. Caleb, I did not. I know. I sat by his bed for 3 months. I held his hand when he. I know, Margaret. They paid her. Bishop paid her. She'd say anything for money. She always. Margaret, look at me. She looked. Caleb Dawson did not look like a man who had just been told his wife of 4 days was being accused of murder. He looked like a man who had been waiting a long time for something worth fighting for. Listen to me real careful. You are not going anywhere. You are not running. You are not leaving this kitchen. You are not leaving this porch. You are not leaving that boy in the next room who calls you mama in his sleep. You hear me? Yes. Bishop wanted you scared. He wanted you on the next stage. He wanted you gone 'fore the warrant got served, so the marriage would look like fraud and the deed would fall to him. Yes. That is not what is going to happen. What is? He folded the letter once, then again. He set it on the table. What's going to happen is tomorrow morning, I'm riding to Amarillo, and I am hiring the meanest lawyer that town has got. And I am bringing him back here. And you and me and that lawyer are going to walk into the Potter County Courthouse, and we are going to make Eunice Collins say to a judge's face the same lie she put on paper for Warren Bishop's money. And if she does, then we'll find out who in Wheeler County saw Henry Collins die, and we'll bring him here, and we'll let him tell the judge what they saw. Caleb. What? I have been called a great many things in my life. I have never been called a murderer. You ain't one. And if the judge believes her. Caleb stood up from the table. He walked around it. He stopped beside her chair. For the first time since she had met him, he reached down and laid his palm flat against the back of her hand. His hand was warm. Margaret Dawson. Yes. The judge ain't gonna believe her, because by the time we are done, you will have stood in front of that courtroom, and you will have spoken, and any man with eyes and ears will know what kind of woman you are. And what kind is that Caleb Dawson? The kind worth standing next to. She did not cry. She would not. She put her flower-white hand over his rough one and held it there. In the next room, Noah was humming softly. The hymn from the first night. She had not heard him hum since she'd come. Then a sound came up the road, a horse riding hard, and a voice they did not yet know hollered from the yard. Mrs. Dawson! Is there a Mrs. Margaret Dawson at this address? Open up by order of the Wheeler County Sheriff's Office. Caleb's hand tightened on hers. Don't answer yet. Why? Because the sheriff don't ride that fast for a social call, and he don't come alone unless he means to ride back with somebody tied to his saddle. She heard the horse stop in the yard. She heard a second horse behind it. She heard boots hit the porch. A fist hammered the door. Mrs. Dawson, by the authority of the state of Texas, open this door. Caleb did not let go of her hand. Margaret? Yes. When I open this door, you do not say one word. You let me speak, whatever they say, whatever they show. You do not say one word until our lawyer's in the room. You promise me. I promise. He stood. He let go of her hand. He walked to the door. He set his palm flat against the wood. And out in the yard, the second man, the one who had not yet spoken, finally did. Open up, Dawson. We got a warrant. And we got somebody with us who's going to identify her on the spot. Margaret's blood turned to water. Because the voice belonged to a woman. And the woman was her mother-in-law. Caleb opened the door. 3 men stood on the porch. One wore a tin star. One carried a shotgun. The third had no business there, and Caleb knew it the second he saw his face. Warren? Caleb. You ain't a sheriff. No. I'm just along for the ride. The man with the star stepped forward. Sheriff Mason, Wheeler County. I got a warrant for Margaret Collins, also known as Margaret Dawson, on the charge of murder in the first degree. I'd ask you to step aside, sir. Sheriff, this is Potter County. You got no jurisdiction on this porch. I got a warrant, sir. You got a piece of paper. You step over that threshold without the Potter County Sheriff standing next to you, and I'll have you for trespass. Behind the 3 men, a 4th horse came around the side of the house. A small, thin woman with iron gray hair sat side saddle, her mouth set in the same line Margaret had been seeing for 16 years. That's her sheriff. That's my son's killer, standing right there in the doorway. Mrs. Collins, please stay back. I will not stay back. That woman poisoned my Henry. She fed him for months. She fed him while he died. Look at her. Look how big she is, and tell me she wasn't eaten off the plate she was killing him with. Margaret was behind Caleb. She did not move. She did not speak. She had promised. Eunice Collins. It was Caleb's voice, low, steady. Yes. My wife is not going to Wheeler County tonight. You are going to ride back to wherever you slept last night. The sheriff is going to ride to the Potter County office and file his paper proper. And on the day a Potter County deputy comes to my door with a Potter County judge's signature in his hand, my wife will walk out of this house under her own power and stand trial like any other free woman in the state of Texas. Are we understood? The sheriff looked at Bishop. Bishop did not look back. The sheriff sighed. Mr. Dawson, I'd just as soon do this without trouble. Then do it proper, Sheriff. There ain't no trouble in doing it proper. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Eunice spat off the side of the porch. You took her in. You. After what she done. Ma'am, Caleb said, I do not know you, and I would prefer to keep it that way. The sheriff tipped his hat. Mr. Dawson, we'll be back. I reckon you will. They rode out. All 4 of them. Bishop turned in his saddle once and looked at Margaret over Caleb's shoulder, and the look was not anger. It was something worse. It was the look of a man who had just learned the price of his next move and decided he was willing to pay it. Caleb closed the door. He set the bar across it. Then he turned to Margaret, and his hands were shaken, and he said, Get the boys. We are sleeping in this kitchen tonight, all 4 of us. On the floor if we have to. The Potter County deputy came on the 3rd morning. He came alone with a folded paper and his hat in his hand. Mrs. Dawson. Sir, I gotta take you in, ma'am. I know it. You can ride your own horse to town if Mr. Dawson don't mind following. I'd be obliged. Caleb came out behind her. Deputy. Mr. Dawson. What's the bond? Judge set it at $2,000. $2,000. Yes, sir. Bishop set the figure, didn't he? Judge set the figure. Mr. Bishop just paid the clerk a visit yesterday. Caleb looked at Margaret. I'll have it by sundown. Caleb, $2,000 is everything. I know what it is. and I know what I'd lose without it." She did not say don't. She did not say I'm not worth it. She had spent 38 years saying those things, and she was done saying them. She nodded once. She climbed on the horse. By sundown, Caleb had mortgaged half the herd to a banker in Amarillo who did not love Warren Bishop. By dark, she was home. By the next morning, Caleb was on the road to Amarillo again, and 3 days after that, he came back with a man in a black coat who did not smile and did not waste words. "Joel Pickett, attorney at law. Mrs. Dawson, your husband has told me everything I need to know to keep you out of a noose. I will need you to tell me everything he hasn't. Sit down." She sat. "You did not poison your first husband." "No, sir." "Tell me how he died." "Fever. Started in his belly. Took him 3 months. The doctor in Wheeler County said it was the same kind going around that summer." "That doctor's name?" "Dr. Pell." Pickett wrote it down. "Mr. Pickett, there is something else." "Tell me." "There was a woman in the house. She came in every day 4 months. She cooked when I was too tired. She washed when I was too sad. Her name was Hattie Morrison. She is a colored woman, sir, and she is the only soul on God's green earth who knows what was in every cup of broth I gave my husband." Pickett's pen paused. "And what was in those cups, Mrs. Dawson?" "Broth, salt, sometimes a little whiskey when the doctor said, and love. That is what was in them, Mr. Pickett." Pickett looked at her over the rim of his spectacles. "Mrs. Dawson, if Hattie Morrison can be brought to that courtroom, your mother-in-law is going to spend a long evening wishing she'd never opened her mouth." "Will they let a colored woman testify against a white woman in Potter County?" "They will if I make 'em." The courtroom was packed. Word had gone out the way it does in small towns when something ugly has been promised and the people of redemption had answered. Every bench was full by 8 o'clock. Folks stood 3 deep against the back wall. Margaret did not look at them. She looked at Caleb. "Whatever they say, Margaret." "I know." "Whatever they call you." "I know." "You sit. You listen. You do not stand up till Pickett tells you to. You hear me." "I hear you." The boys were not there. Caleb had said no twice. He had said it again that morning when Noah cried and Ethan threw a tin cup against the kitchen wall. He had said it standing on the porch when both boys watched the wagon pull away and Margaret had not let herself look back, because if she had looked back, she would not have gotten in. Judge Holloway took the bench. He did not look at Margaret. He looked at Bishop sitting in the front row. Then he looked at his papers. State of Texas versus Margaret Dawson on the charge of murder in the first degree. How does the defendant plead? Pickett stood. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Prosecution may call its first witness. The state calls Mrs. Eunice Collins. Eunice came forward in black silk, the same silk Margaret had not been able to afford for Henry's funeral. She placed her hand on the Bible. She swore. "Mrs. Collins, tell the court about your son. My Henry was the kindest boy God ever made. And how did he die? He died screaming. He died in his bed begging for water. He died because that woman fed him slow and steady for months." "What did she feed him?" "Broth. Always broth. She wouldn't let nobody else in the kitchen. She kept the door shut. She kept the windows shut. And my Henry got weaker every week." "Did you see her put anything in the broth?" "I saw her stir it. I saw her smile while she stirred it." "Your witness." Pickett did not approach the box right away. He looked at Eunice a long moment. "Mrs. Collins, you said the defendant kept the kitchen door shut." "Yes." "You did not have a key to your own son's house." "That woman had the key." "Mrs. Collins, your son's house had no lock on the kitchen door. I have been there. I checked yesterday." Eunice's mouth opened. It closed. "It must have been the front door then." "Mrs. Collins, you live 2 streets over from your son's house. You walked there every day. And you could not get into the kitchen for months. She kept us out." "By what means?" By being there. By standing in front of it. She is a large woman, sir. You see how she is." The courtroom rustled. Bishop's lawyer winced. "Mrs. Collins, I'd like to ask you about a Mr. Warren Bishop." "I don't know any Mr. Bishop. You don't. No. Mrs. Collins, I have here a receipt from the Western Union office in Wheeler County, dated the 14th of last month. It shows a wire transfer of $300 to one Eunice Collins from one Warren Bishop of Potter County. Would you like to revise your testimony? The courtroom went perfectly still. Eunice's hand went to her throat. That was a Christian gift from a Christian man. $300, Mrs. Collins, is a great deal of Christian charity to send to a stranger. He ain't a stranger, She stopped. Pickett did not smile. He waited. No further questions, Your Honor. The defense calls Mrs. Hattie Morrison. The courtroom shifted. A woman walked up the center aisle with her chin held the way a person holds it when they have spent their life being told to lower it and have decided today they will not. The bailiff hesitated. Judge Holloway looked at her over his spectacles. State your name. Hattie Morrison, sir. Mrs. Morrison, the testimony you give in this courtroom is given under oath. Yes, sir. You may be seated. She sat. She put her hand on the Bible. She swore. Mrs. Morrison, you worked for Henry and Margaret Collins. I did. 4 months. Day in, day out till the day Mr. Henry died. Tell the court what you saw Margaret Collins feed her husband. Broth, sir. Same as anybody. Chicken when we had a chicken. Beef when the butcher had bones. Salt. A spoon of whiskey now and then, like the doctor said. Anything else? No, sir. Nothing from a bottle she kept hid? No, sir. The only thing she kept in her apron was a handkerchief, sir, and it was wet for breakfast every morning. A sound went through the courtroom. A woman in the back row started to cry. Mrs. Morrison, did you ever in those 4 months see anyone else attempt to put anything in Mr. Henry Collins' food? Hattie did not answer right away. She looked at Eunice Collins. Eunice would not meet her eyes. Mrs. Morrison? Yes, sir, I did. Who? His mother. The courtroom erupted. Judge Holloway hammered his gavel. Bishop went pale. Eunice opened her mouth and closed it like a fish on a dock. Mrs. Morrison, tell the court what you saw. I saw the older Mrs. Collins come into that kitchen one morning when Miss Margaret had gone to the well. I saw her take a packet out of her sleeve. I saw her put it in the broth pot. I saw her stir it twice, and I saw her leave. What did you do? I poured that broth in the yard, sir. I made fresh. I never said a word. Because the old Mrs. Collins, she'd told me the week before that if I lost my place at that house, no white woman in Wheeler County would ever hire me again. And why are you saying a word today? Hattie Morrison looked across the courtroom. She looked at Margaret. Because Miss Margaret sat with my own daughter for 3 nights when my Sarah had the croup last winter. She did not know me yet, sir. She just heard a child crying across the yard and she came. And I have been waiting 9 months for the Lord to give me a chance to pay that back. And here it is. The courtroom was silent. No further questions, Your Honor. Pickett turned. Your Honor, the defense has one more witness. Who? Mrs. Margaret Dawson herself. Margaret stood without being told. Caleb's hand brushed her sleeve as she rose. She walked to the box. She swore. Mrs. Dawson, did you poison your first husband? No, sir, I did not. Did you marry Caleb Dawson for the deed to his ranch? No, sir. Then why did you marry him? Pickett gave her the silence. She did not fill it with the answer she had practiced. I married him, she said quietly, because he was the first man in 38 years who looked at me like I was a person sitting on a bench. And because his 7-year-old boy fell asleep on my shoulder in a wagon I had never been in before. And because when I told him I had nowhere to go, he did not offer to send me somewhere. He offered to bring me home. A door slammed at the back of the courtroom. Every head turned. Ethan Dawson stood in the doorway. Behind him, his small hand and his older brother's, stood Noah. Noah's face was red. He had been running. Both of them had. Ethan Dawson, you sit down, Caleb said. You are not supposed to be here. Ethan did not sit down. Pa. Ethan. Pa, I'm gonna say something, and you can whip me for it later. Judge Holloway raised his gavel. Young man, sir. Ethan looked up at the judge. His voice cracked. He swallowed. He started over. "Sir, my name is Ethan Dawson. I'm 13. My mama died 2 years ago. I have not let one person come into our house since." The gavel did not come down. "I called Mrs. Dawson a stranger when she came. I told her she wasn't my mother. I told her she was just there for the deed. I said it to her face and I meant it." The courtroom was perfectly still. "And then I watched her, sir. I watched her every day for a week. I watched her sit up with my brother when he had a nightmare. I watched her stand on our porch and tell Mr. Bishop to his face that he could not buy her off. I watched her get on a horse to come to this courtroom, knowing she might not ride back, and she did not cry, sir. She did not cry once, and she made my brother's breakfast, for she did." His voice broke. "Maybe it started fake, sir. Maybe my pa married her for the deed. I don't know. But she is the first person who stayed, sir. She is the only person who stayed. And if you take her away from us today, you will be taking her from a boy." He looked at Noah, who has not slept a full night in 2 years until she came. Noah let go of his brother's hand. He walked down the center aisle. He walked past the prosecutor. He walked past Pickett. He walked past Caleb, who half rose from his chair and stopped. He walked to the witness box. He lifted his arms. "Mama." Margaret's hand came up and covered her mouth. "Mama, please don't go." She came down out of the box. She did not remember doing it. She gathered him into her arms, and she held him in the middle of the Potter County courtroom in front of God, and Eunice Collins and Warren Bishop, and 100 witnesses, and she held him. And she heard somewhere behind her the sound of grown men crying into their hats. Judge Holloway brought his gavel down once, quietly. "Counselor." "Yes, Your Honor. This court finds the defendant not guilty on all charges." He paused. "And this court further orders the arrest of Mrs. Eunice Collins on the charge of attempted murder, pending the testimony of Mrs. Hattie Morrison." He looked just once at Warren Bishop. "And this court will be taking a long look at every signature this office has stamped in the last 2 years." Bishop stood up so fast his chair fell over. He did not say a word. He walked out of the courtroom, and Margaret Dawson, holding a 7-year-old boy who had just called her mama in front of half the county, looked up over his small shoulder and met the eyes of her husband across a room full of strangers. Caleb Dawson was already on his feet. He was already walking toward her. Caleb reached her before the gavel had stopped echoing. He did not touch her shoulder. He did not say a word in front of all those people. He stood beside her close enough that his sleeve brushed hers close enough that Noah, still in her arms, could reach a small hand out and lay it on his pa's chest. Pickett was saying something to the judge. Margaret did not hear it. Ethan was moving down the center aisle slow, like a boy walking toward a fire he wasn't sure was out. He stopped 2 feet short of her. "Mrs. Dawson." "Ethan, I owe you an apology." "Honey, you don't owe me." "Yes, ma'am, I do. And my pa raised me to make 'em when I owe 'em, even if it's in front of 100 people who ain't got no business hearin'." The courtroom was still mostly full. Folks had stopped pretending to leave. They stood with their hats half on and their bonnets half off, and they listened. "I called you a stranger. I called you a fraud. I told my pa you was just there for the deed. I said it loud enough for you to hear me. I said it more than once." "Ethan." "And you fed me anyway, ma'am. And you sat at the table when I wouldn't eat what you cooked. And you never once asked me to apologize for today. And I am apologizing for you ask ma'am, because that is the kind of thing a Dawson does." He looked up at his pa. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Dawson." "Mama," Margaret said very quietly. "If you want." He swallowed. He nodded. He did not say it yet. He was not ready, but he nodded. Caleb's hand came up and rested on the back of Margaret's neck. Just for a second. Just long enough that she felt it. "Let's go home." They walked out of the Potter County Courthouse the way they had walked in together, but the silence in the street was different. The women who had whispered 3 weeks ago when she came in on Caleb's arm did not whisper now. One of them, a thin woman in a gray dress, stepped down off the boardwalk as Margaret passed and laid a hand on her sleeve. "Mrs. Dawson." Yes, I'm sorry. For what, ma'am? For what I said. For what I let my husband say. For what I let my children hear me say. I am sorry. Margaret did not have an answer for that right off. What's your name? Eliza Briggs. Mrs. Briggs, I accept your apology. I would be obliged if you'd come by the ranch for coffee one day. I will, ma'am. I will indeed. Margaret nodded. She did not say more. She did not have more to give yet. She put one foot in front of the other, and she walked to the wagon with Noah on her hip and Ethan at her side and Caleb's hand at her back, and she did not look at any of the faces she passed. She did not need to. She had already heard them. The ride home was quiet. Noah fell asleep against her chest before they were a mile out of town. Ethan rode his own horse alongside the wagon, sit in the saddle the way a man sits a saddle, and not the way a 13-year-old does. Caleb drove with one hand on the reins and the other resting on the bench between them, palm up. Margaret looked at his hand for a long time before she put hers in it. He did not speak. He just closed his fingers around hers and held them all the way to the ranch road. When they reached the house, Ethan led Noah inside without being told. He took the boy to his bed. He pulled off his boots. He stayed a while. Margaret stood in the kitchen doorway and listened to him humming the hymn she had sung the first night. He did not know all the words. He hummed the ones he knew. Noah hummed back. She came into the kitchen. Caleb was at the table. Margaret. Yes. Sit. She sat. He pushed a tin cup of coffee across to her. He had poured it before she'd even come in. Margaret, I gotta say something, and it ain't gonna come out right because I ain't a man what says things right. So I'm gonna say it, and then I'm gonna sit here and let you say back whatever you want to say back, even if it's nothing. Even if it's get out of my kitchen, Caleb Dawson. I'm gonna sit here. Caleb, let me finish. She closed her mouth. I didn't marry you for the deed. The room got very quiet. I told you I did. I told myself I did. I let you sit at this table 3 weeks thinking I did because it was easier on you and because it was easier on me. Caleb, Margaret, I saw you on that bench in Redemption. You was crying with your face in your hands and you had a carpet bag at your feet, and I knew 'fore I crossed the street that I was going to bring you home with me. I told myself it was 'cause my boys needed a woman. I told myself it was 'cause Bishop was at my neck. I told myself a lot of things. What was the truth? The truth was I had not seen a person look that kind in 3 years, and I was not going to ride out of that town and leave her on a bench. Kind. Yes, ma'am. Caleb Dawson, I was sitting in the dust crying. And you said I'm all right when I asked. You said I'm all right when you was not all right. You said it so a stranger wouldn't worry over you. That is the kindest thing I have ever heard a person say, and I knew right then I was going to do what I done. She put both hands flat on the table. You should have told me 'fore you put my hand in yours that night. I know it. You should have told me 'fore the courthouse. I know it. You should have told me 'fore today. Yes, ma'am. I should have. Why didn't you? Because I was a coward, Margaret. Because I have buried one woman I loved, and I did not know if my heart was a thing I could afford to lay out on a kitchen table again. I do not know it now. But I am laying it out anyway, because you stood up in that courtroom today, and you said he offered to bring me home, and a man who's been offered that kind of grace by a woman like you does not get to be a coward twice. Margaret did not say anything for a long minute. Then she stood up. She walked around the table. She did not sit in his lap. She did not throw her arms around him. She stood beside his chair, and she lifted his rough hand, and she pressed it flat against her cheek, and she held it there. Caleb Dawson. Yes. Say it once more. Margaret Dawson. I did not marry you for the deed. Once more. I married you because I had never seen kindness in a body, for I seen it in yours. She closed her eyes. All right. All right. All right. Drink your coffee. There is bread to bake. And in the morning, you are going to teach me how to ride that horse you got tied out back, Because I am tired of needing a wagon to leave my own property." He laughed. It was the first time she had heard him laugh. "Yes, ma'am." The first sign that Warren Bishop was not done came on a Tuesday. Caleb rode in from the south pasture at dusk with something wrapped in a feed sack in his lap. He did not bring it into the house. He set it down on the porch. He came inside without it. "Margaret." "What?" "Boys upstairs." "Yes." "I need you to come look at something, and I need you not to make a sound." She followed him out. He unwrapped the sack on the porch. Inside the sack was a calf. The calf was dead. A length of wire had been twisted around its small neck. Pinned to its hide was a piece of paper. It read, in a clean schoolmaster's hand, "The next one walks on 2 legs." Margaret did not make a sound. She had promised. But her hand went up to her mouth. "Caleb, don't." "Caleb, that is a child's word for the boys." "I know what it is." "What are we going to do?" "We are going to bury this calf in the dark, and we are going to ride to the sheriff in the morning, and we are going to sleep in the kitchen tonight with the rifle by the door." Bishop did this. Bishop didn't twist that wire himself. Bishop don't twist wire. Bishop pays men what twist wire. How many men? He's got 3 on his place that I know of. Maybe more by now. He's been hiring. Caleb. Margaret. You should never have married me. Margaret Dawson, you say that one more time in my house and I will put you over my knee like a child, and I am a grown man speaking to a grown woman, and I mean every word. She closed her mouth. "I am saying," he went on, "that I would do it again at noon on the courthouse steps with the whole county watching. I am saying that you are the best thing what has come through my gate in 3 years. I am saying that Warren Bishop killed a calf to scare a woman, and the woman he killed it to scare is not the woman he thinks he married me to." Margaret stood up straight. "No, sir, she is not." The rider came 2 mornings later. He came alone, and he came at a walk, and he came with his hat off in his lap, which was not the way Bishop's men came. Caleb saw him from the south fence. He met him at the gate. "State your business." "Mr. Dawson, sir. I am Reverend Whitlow out of Wheeler County. I have ridden 2 days to bring somebody to your door, and I would not have done it if there had been anywhere else for her to go." Caleb's hand was on his rifle. "Who?" "Your wife's sister-in-law, Mr. Dawson, Mrs. Rebecca Collins." Caleb did not lower the rifle. "And why is Mrs. Rebecca Collins on my road?" "Because her mother is in the Wheeler County Jail, sir. And because the bank has taken her brother's house. And because she has a baby with her, sir. 3 months old. Her husband died in the war, and she has been living with her mother since. And there is nowhere else for her to go, and she would not come, sir. I rode her here. She has been asking me to turn around the last 50 miles. Caleb looked past the Reverend. A second horse stood 20 yards behind. On it was a thin woman in a gray dress. In her arms was a bundle. He looked at the Reverend a long minute. Then he turned his horse and rode back to the house. He came in the back door. Margaret was at the stove. "Margaret." "What?" "There is a woman in our yard who used to live in your husband's house. She has a baby and no place to go. She did not come willin'. A preacher dragged her here." Margaret's hand went still on the spoon. "Rebecca." "Yes." She did not turn around. "Caleb." "Yes." 16 years. "I know." 16 years she spat at me at every Christmas. 16 years she told her mother everything I done wrong. She stood in my kitchen the day I left and she told me my husband pitied me. She said it 3 days after he died. I know Margaret. And she is in our yard. With a baby, Margaret. Margaret closed her eyes. She set the spoon down. She wiped her hands on her apron. She walked out the front door. Rebecca was still on the horse. She would not look up. The baby in her arms made a small sound. "Rebecca." "Margaret. Get down off that horse." "I can't stay here." "I did not ask you to stay. I asked you to get down off that horse." Rebecca got down. She held the baby tight. She did not look up. "Look at me, Rebecca." She would not. "Rebecca Collins, You look at me. She looked up. She had been crying for 2 days. Her face was raw with it. Margaret, I will sleep in the barn. I will leave at first light. I will not ask you for one thing. The Reverend made me come. I did not want to come. Why didn't you want to come? Because I do not deserve to come. Margaret looked at her a long time. No, she said finally. You do not. Rebecca's mouth shook. But the baby in your arms does. So you will not sleep in my barn. You will sleep in the small room behind the kitchen, and you will eat what I cook, and you will hold that child where it is warm. And when you have rested, and the baby has been fed proper, you and I are going to sit at my kitchen table, and we are going to have a conversation that has waited 16 years to be had. Are we understood? Rebecca nodded. She could not speak. Reverend? Yes, ma'am. Will you stay to supper? I would be honored, ma'am. Caleb will see to your horse. She turned. She walked back into the house. She did not look back to see if Rebecca followed. She knew she would. The conversation at the kitchen table that night lasted 3 hours. Margaret did not let Rebecca off easy. She did not let her off at all. She made her name every cruelty out loud. She made her name them with the baby asleep on her shoulder, so she would feel the weight of what a child could not yet know. And when Rebecca had wept herself dry, Margaret poured her a second cup of coffee. Rebecca. Yes. I am not your friend. I am not your sister. I do not yet know if I will ever be either. I know. But you will sleep under this roof tonight because there is a child in your arms who did not choose her grandmother's sins. And in the morning, you and me will see what kind of woman you are willing to be on the other side of an apology. Margaret? What? I am sorry. I know. It is not enough. No, it is not. But it is the first sentence of what might one day be. Rebecca laid her head down on the table and wept. The baby slept on. Caleb was on the porch, and Ethan was in the doorway with his rifle in his hands, and Noah was upstairs in his bed, humming a hymn that had taken root in him. And somewhere out beyond the south fence, out where the dead calf had been buried 2 days before, a single rifle shot cracked through the dark. Caleb was on his feet before the sound had finished traveling. Margaret, I heard it. Get Rebecca and the baby in the cellar. Caleb, Margaret, get them in the cellar, now. A second shot, a third. Caleb pulled his rifle off the wall. Ethan already had his. Pa! Ethan, you stay with your stepmother, and you do not come out of that cellar till I am the one who opens the door. You hear me? Pa, I am 13 years old, and I can shoot. You are 13 years old, and your brother and your aunt and that baby need somebody between them and the door, and you are that somebody. Now do as I say. A fourth shot. Closer. A man's voice hollering from the dark. Dawson, you come on out here, Dawson. Caleb opened the front door. He did not look back at her. He stepped out onto his porch with a rifle in his hand, and a 6-year-old's hymn drifting down the stairs behind him, and the night swallowed him whole. Margaret stood in her kitchen with 3 people counting on her and a baby asleep in another woman's arms. She did not freeze. She did not cry. She turned to Rebecca, and her voice came out steady as new ice. Get up, take the baby, walk. Rebecca got up. She did not ask questions. She tucked the baby tighter against her chest, and she stood. Ethan was already at the cellar door, rifle in his hand. Noah came down the stairs without being called. He was holding the tin cup he had carried the first night Margaret met him. Mama? Noah, go with your brother. Mama, where you going? I am going to stand with your pa. No. Honey. No, you stay. She knelt down to him. She put both her hands on his small shoulders. Noah Dawson, listen to me. You sleep all night now because I am here. Yes. Yes. Your pa is on that porch because he is the man what stands between us and what is comin'. And I am his wife. And tonight, what is comin' for me, as much as it is comin' for him. And I am not going to ask him to stand there alone. Mama, please. Noah, Please. I will come back. Promise. She did not lie to children. She had not lied to Noah once. I cannot promise that, son, but I can promise I will not run, and I can promise that if I do not come back, the last thing on my mind will be your face. Now go. Go with your brother. Ethan looked at her. His mouth was a hard line. Mama, take Pa's spare. It's behind the door. She had never fired a rifle in her life. She nodded anyway. Get your brother in the cellar. Ethan took Noah by the hand. He took Rebecca by the elbow. He led them down. He looked back once at Margaret, and she saw on his face the look of a boy who had decided in that exact moment to remember her not as a stranger and not as a stepmother, but as something else, something he did not yet have a word for. The cellar door closed. She took the spare rifle off the wall. She did not know what she was doing. She knew what she was doing. She opened the front door. Caleb was on the porch. 3 riders sat in the dark beyond the gate. A 4th horse stood behind them, and on the 4th horse was Warren Bishop. Caleb heard her come out. He did not turn his head. Margaret? I am here. Margaret, I told you to go in the cellar. I heard you telling me. Get back inside. No. Margaret Dawson. Caleb Dawson. You are my husband, and I have been doing what every man in my life has told me to do for 38 years, and the one time I did not, I walked off a porch and onto yours. I am staying. The riders had heard. One of them laughed. You hear that Mr. Bishop fat woman thinks she's part of the negotiation. Bishop's voice was calm. It was always calm. Mind your tongue, son. That is a lady. That is a witness, sir. We was paid to handle the witness. You was paid to do what I tell you. Hold your tongue. Caleb did not move his rifle. Bishop? Caleb. You rode onto my land in the dark with 3 guns, and you had a man fire a warning shot in my pasture. You know what that means in this part of Texas. I know what it means. Then say what you came to say, and do it quick, because the next sound I want to hear is hooves going the other direction. Bishop pushed his hat back. I came to make you an offer, Caleb. $3,000 in your hand by morning. You and your boys and your wife are gone by noon, and this matter is closed. And if I say no, then we are gonna have a conversation we are both gonna regret. Caleb laughed once. It was not a happy sound. Warren, you done lost your case in a courtroom. You done lost your wife, I'd wager, when she sees the receipts the judge is pulling tomorrow. You done lost a county clerk what won't take your bribes no more. And now you ride onto my porch with 3 men, and you offer me $3,000 for land you was trying to take for free. Caleb Dawson, I have killed men for less. I'd wager you've paid men to kill men for less. There's a difference. The man who had laughed cocked his rifle. Mr. Bishop, let me... Hold. Margaret stepped forward. She had not planned to. She did not know why she did. The rifle was heavy in her hands. Mr. Bishop, Mrs. Dawson, you came to my house in the dark. Ma'am, this is between your husband and me. You came to my house in the dark with 3 guns and a man on a horse you bought to kill a stranger you have never spoken 3 sentences to. There is nothing you can say to me from a horse in my yard at this hour that is between you and any soul on God's earth but me. Ma'am, you listen to me, Warren Bishop. You have spent your money trying to make me disappear. You wired $300 to a woman to call me a murderer. You killed a calf, and you pinned a note to its hide to make me leave my children. You sent 3 guns to my porch tonight to finish the work that the courthouse would not let you finish in daylight. And every dollar you spent on every one of those things, every dollar was wasted, sir, because I have been told to disappear from rooms for 38 years, and I am not going to disappear from this one. Bishop's mouth moved. Nothing came out. Sir, I would suggest you ride. I would suggest your men ride first. And, sir, I would suggest you do it before the men riding up that road behind you reach my gate. Bishop turned in his saddle. So did his 3 guns. Hoofbeats, a lot of them, coming fast. A voice rang out clear, Warren Bishop, this is Sheriff Hollis of Potter County. You drop them rifles or my men will drop them for you. It happened fast. The man who had laughed lifted his rifle. He did not aim it at Caleb. He aimed it at Margaret. She did not move. A shot cracked. Not from his gun, from somewhere behind him. The man dropped his rifle and clutched his arm and fell sideways off his horse, hollering. "Next one's gonna find a heart," the sheriff hollered. "Drop 'em, all of you." The other two men dropped their rifles. Bishop's hand stayed on his hip. "Warren," the sheriff called, "you are not stupid enough to draw on me. Get down." Bishop did not get down right off. He looked at Caleb on the porch. He looked at Margaret beside him. "Mrs. Dawson." "Mr. Bishop?" "This ain't over." "Sir, it has been over for a week. You are the last person in 3 counties to know." Bishop got down off his horse. He did it slow. He kept his hands where they could be seen. The sheriff and 6 men rode through the gate. One was a tall man in a town coat with a star pinned to it that did not match the sheriff's. "Mr. Bishop." "Marshal, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of a witness in a federal land fraud investigation. You will come with us now, or you will come with us in a wagon." Bishop did not say a word. He let them put the cuffs on him. He let them put him on his horse. He looked at Margaret one time before they took him out. She looked back. She did not look away first. He did. Eliza Briggs's husband came up to the porch with his hat in his hand. "Mr. Dawson?" "Mr. Briggs, my wife told me what your wife said to her on the boardwalk in Redemption. She come home and she cried for an hour. Then she made me ride out to the sheriff's office at first light. I have been at his door every morning for a week. So has half this county. We rode tonight because a boy come into town an hour ago and said he'd seen 4 riders heading for the Dawson place." "What boy?" Briggs looked over his shoulder. A skinny kid, maybe 12, stood by the gate holding the reins of a tired horse. "He come into the office an hour back, Caleb. Said he was done. Said Mr. Bishop owed him 3 months of wages he was never going to see." Caleb looked at the boy. "Son, what's your name?" "Tom Halsey, sir." "Tom, come up here." The boy came. His eyes were on his boots. "Sir." "What?" "I told him about her, sir, on the bench. I told him there was a strange woman crying on a bench, and I told him you'd took her home. He paid me $1 for it. I've been carrying that $1 in my boot 2 weeks. He bent down. He pulled the $1 out of his boot. He held it out. "I don't want it, sir." Margaret stepped forward. She took the $1 from him. She pressed it back into his hand and closed his fingers around it. "Tom." "Yes, ma'am." "You buy your mother something with that. You buy her something that lasts, and then we will never speak of this $1 again." The boy cried then. He cried with his fist closed around $1, and his face turned into the porch post. Margaret put her hand on the top of his head. She did not say more. There was nothing more to say. The house emptied out around midnight. Briggs and his men rode back to town. The sheriff took Bishop and his guns and rode for the Potter County Jail. The boy Tom slept on a pallet by the kitchen stove, his fist still closed around the $1. Rebecca was upstairs with the baby on her chest. Ethan sat at the table cleaning his rifle the way a man cleans a rifle. Noah was on Margaret's lap with his small hand laid flat against her collarbone, as if to make sure her heart was still doing the thing hearts are supposed to do. Caleb came in from the porch. He set his rifle on the hooks. He took off his hat. He hung it on the nail by the door, which was a thing she had not seen him do before, because before tonight he had carried it everywhere he went. He sat down across from her. He looked at her for a long minute. "Margaret." "Yes." "You walked out onto that porch with a rifle you do not know how to fire." "I did." "And you told Warren Bishop he was done." "I did." "To his face, with his guns aimed at you." "Yes." He shook his head slow. "Woman, I do not understand you." "I am beginning to think there is not much to understand. I am beginning to think I have been a very simple woman my whole life, and the world just kept telling me I was complicated to keep me from noticing." "Margaret Dawson." "Yes." "I love you." Noah's small head came up. "Say it again, Pa." Caleb looked at his boy. Then he looked at his wife. "I love your mama, son. I should have said it 3 weeks ago. I should have said it on the bench. I should have said it the night she sang you to sleep. I am saying it now." Margaret could not speak. She did not need to. Ethan set down the cloth he was using on his rifle. "Pa. Son. It was already known." "That's so." "Yes, sir. The whole house knowed it. You was the slowest one." Caleb laughed. He covered his eyes with one rough hand, and he laughed, and Margaret realized she was laughing too, and Noah was laughing on her lap, and even Ethan was smiling the small, careful smile of a 13-year-old who did not yet trust smiling all the way. She did not feel large in that kitchen. She did not feel small in that kitchen either. She felt the exact size she was. And she felt that the exact size she was the exact size she had always been meant to be. The autumn came on slow that year. Eunice Collins went to trial in Wheeler County and was sent to the Women's Penitentiary in Huntsville for 7 years. Warren Bishop did not see a jury. He pled to 4 federal charges and took 15 years in Leavenworth, and his wife sold the neighboring ranch to a man from Kansas who was kind to his horses. Rebecca stayed 3 months and then took the baby east to her dead husband's people in Tennessee, and she wrote Margaret once a month, and the letters were short, and they were honest, and Margaret kept every one of them in a box on her dresser. Tom Halsey grew 1.5 inches before Christmas. He called Caleb sir, and he called Margaret ma'am, and he sent $4 home to his mother every month. Ethan stopped sleeping with his rifle. Noah stopped sleeping with the lamp on. He still hummed the hymn at night, but he hummed it now because he liked the tune. One evening in late October, Margaret was on the porch barefoot. She was wearing one of Caleb's old shirts, because the wind had a bite in it, and she had not gone in yet to fetch a shawl. Caleb came up the steps from the barn. He stopped a step below her, which put her face level with his. "Margaret." "Yes." "You know what saved this place?" "The sheriff." "No, ma'am." "The marshal." "No, ma'am." "Then what, Caleb Dawson?" "You. The woman my boy Ethan would not look at 3 months ago. The woman my boy Noah wouldn't let go of after 15 minutes. The woman who stood up in a courtroom and said he offered to bring me home. The woman who walked off a cellar staircase with a rifle she did not know how to fire because she was not going to let her husband stand alone on his own porch. You, Margaret. Not the marriage, not the deed, not the trial. You." She did not answer right off. She lifted her hand. She laid it against the side of his face. His beard was rough under her palm. "Caleb." "Yes. For 38 years, every soul who ever knew my name told me I was too much, too big, too plain, too poor, too quiet, too loud, too needy, too sad, too old, too slow. I know it. I came west on a stage with $22 and no name worth keeping. I sat on a bench in a town called Redemption, and I waited for the world to tell me what I was supposed to do next, because I had run out of guesses. I know it. And a stranger in a dusty hat walked up to me, and he did not ask me to be less. He did not ask me to be more. He asked me if I was hungry, and he asked me if I had a place. And he put his palm up on a kitchen table and waited. Yes. Caleb Dawson. Margaret Dawson. I have spent my whole life trying to disappear from rooms, and tonight on this porch in this shirt with your hand on my hip, and your boy humming upstairs, and your other boy sleeping with the lamp off, and a girl named Rebecca writing me letters from Tennessee tonight. Sir, I am not going to disappear from one more room as long as I live." She paused. "I am the room." Caleb did not say anything for a long moment. Then he stepped up onto the porch beside her, and he wrapped his arm around her waist, and he kissed her forehead slow, the way a man kisses a thing he intends to keep, and he said very quietly, "Yes, ma'am, you are." And Margaret Dawson, who had once been told she was too much for any man's love, stood on her own porch, in her own husband's shirt, with 2 boys counting her as their mama, and a frontier wind pulling at her hair, and she was not too much. She was exactly enough, and for the rest of her life she never apologized for taking up space in a room again.